Hello, everybody.
Welcome. We have a full house.
Can you hear us okay? Moving good? All right. Looks like we got a lot of people who want to be experts today. Love it.
Well, speaking of that, there are two sessions going on. This is the expert, getting the most out of task management for an expert level. If you discover that you would like to be in the other one, we will not take it personally. Someone else would probably like your chair. It would be fine. But we are going to be talking about the expert level.
And just starting out with a nice thank you to all of our partners, Unicorn, Visionary, Innovator. As Jack mentioned in the keynote today, we have a lot of people helping make this happen. So a big thank you to all of them. So a little bit about me. I am a onboarding specialist here, primarily dealing with mid-market firms. I'm actually coming up on my 7th year at Clio. So I specialize with the larger firms, helping get everybody comfortable, learn how to use Clio, get that ball rolling, setting everyone up for success.
And my name is Sherry Borick. I am a Clio Gold certified consultant. My team has been Clio Gold certified consultants for about 10 years and legal technology consultants for much longer than that. And so our firm helps people configure, customize, train, and get the most out of their technology tools.
So I'm all about getting them started. Sherry's all about taking them to that next level.
Exactly. So as I mentioned, this is an expert session. We have a few learning objectives. The first is talking about tasks in general and using task lists, how to use them, what are best practices, how to make the most use out of the features within the tasks, and then taking that onto a new level, which is automation, and using the opportunities that we have within Clio to do that, followed by some frequently asked questions.
So everyone here likely already uses tasks to some level. You know, you're using them, you know that they're there, but you're here because you want to take it to that next level. And that's what we want to help you do. We want to help you make your tasks smarter, more trackable, automated, simplify the work.
We have a hypothetical fictional law firm, Smith & Jones, and it's fictional as far as not really a true case study, but we're going to use a bunch of anecdotes that we've both experienced through our travels. Names will be anonymized to protect them. I think there may be a few in this room now. This particular firm is an estate planning firm, and they're doing okay. They're using tasks, but they're finding that things are falling through the cracks. And because things are falling through the cracks, they're not getting the right follow-up. Sometimes clients aren't getting informed the way they need to be, and they've realized that something has to be done to up their game. And so what we have found, both of us, is that when there is no one source of truth, that everyone has one place to look for all of the tasks in their environment, that's one big gap. And so people are tracking their tasks on their own. They're on a spreadsheet. They're in a Google Doc, they're in Outlook, they're on a Post-it note, they're in a notebook, they're in their heads. And that is just a recipe for disaster. And so we want to make sure that we approach this in an organized way. One other thing that we have found is that sometimes there's an over-reliance on using deadlines as tasks. And then by the time you look at that day, you have a really important deadline that's just showing up as an all-day event, and oops, no one had time to prepare because they didn't look at it in advance. And so what we're going to do is take a closer look at how we can make that move in a more automated way.
So taking a look at our example list here, at Smith & Jones, they have a lot of tasks going on. It is messy, they're overdue. Some of them aren't even linked to matters. It's unclear what the next step is for them. This is not something that I think if I log in the morning and I look at this, I'm not looking forward to my day. I don't know what I need to do next. I'm stressed out. I'm probably going to ignore it and just do whatever is at the top of my mind.
And so what we want to accomplish is to use the task list feature. And some of you may already be using the task list feature. And so this is an example where you can introduce structure into the way that you are doing your tasks. Now, a task list can have a variety of items within it. We have on the screen a couple where you have 7 tasks, 2 tasks, and so on. And so each of them is going to be clearly defined as to what is trying to be accomplished. And we are sometimes going to have them by practice area. In fact, we'll talk about that next.
Yeah, so that's the key point is when putting together these lists, it should be very clear what their purpose is for. So, whether that's with a nice clear name like we have here, nice description as to what scenario this list is for. And then of course, yes, organizing by practice area is always helpful, especially for those here that deal with a lot of different areas of practice. It can be chaotic. Things may sound a little similar workflow. So having clear naming convention, clear organization will keep you from going down the wrong rabbit hole with your objectives.
And so once you're creating and you've set up the new task list, you are going to create the individual tasks. Now, this is something that I always find that my clients are a little bit confused by. Well, what exactly is a task template? I'm already in the task list. And so really all that is the individual tasks that you'll add that together make up a grouping. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about and is very important is deciding how granular that you're going to be versus combining. And I know that one of my firms had, when they created a probate workflow, they decided that every single thing that they had to do from the beginning of the relationship to the end was going to be in one task list. 64 tasks showing up at one time was a little overwhelming. And so instead, I would recommend that those get broken up into individual sets that are meaningful. And so on the other hand, when we have tasks, we might want to combine them, right? Because again, using another real life example, there was a firm that I work with where they needed to make sure that all documents had been received. And so every time they onboarded, they had the 22 documents that had to be received at one time. And so within a few days, the person who was responsible for that had hundreds of tasks that they had to manage. And so we designed something a little bit different. And we said, okay, look, there's going to be one that says, here are these sets. Did these 5 things come in? Great. Did these come in? We had some check boxes so that there were custom fields to work in conjunction with the tasks to make sure that they could easily see what had been done. And so it's a little bit of an art, it's a little bit of a science to try and figure out how to manage those things. So here's some best practices.
And that's the important thing to note about the art versus the science is everyone's here's firm is a little bit different. How what we talk about today applies to you is going to require a little bit of thought on your part. And taking what we talk about today and looking at how you operate and how we can make those changes. It's not going to be identical. You're not all going to suddenly start doing tasks exactly the same way. And so with those best practices, taking a look here when we're putting together a task, we want clearly defined descriptions. We want to know exactly what needs to be happening, accurate deadlines, and a couple of important notes here actually. Talking about the task type, Sherry and I have been talking about this a lot recently, is incredibly useful for collaborative work. We're going to talk about why in a little bit, but when dealing with multiple people needing to be involved in certain action items, having clear categories for your different tasks can allow you to properly filter and search for action items that you are able to help with, even if the task is not directly assigned to you. And then next, of course, being the time estimate. So this is great for setting budgets towards these action items. So if you say, this should take 2 hours for you to accomplish, that's great. And then when we start tracking time against that, we can see if we stayed under budget, did we go over budget, did we meet it? You can track that, report on that. So it becomes very valuable. And actually, Sherry and I just thought of something this morning, so we apologize for not having a visual for this. One thing that comes up a lot is tying tasks together with documents. drafting, sending documents out for review. And while there is no direct way to connect them, if you have spent any time in the document section, you know you have the ability to copy an internal link, and you can actually then paste that into the description of the task. So this way, when you assign a task to somebody, they can click on that link directly to the document that you are asking them to action. So even though it's not directly connected, it is a fantastic workaround that we had a little morning thought today.
Always want to slide in an extra tip or two. One of the things that I also want to mention is the ability to add reminders where appropriate, right? Because again, about collaboration, I know that sometimes you have a manager and a staff person or two people working on the same thing. A way that you can manage that to make sure that both people are aware is to add reminders for that other person, right? So, hey, Jan is the one that's assigned to this, and we're going to remind Joe that this is coming up. This is something that will allow you to have additional preparation, additional work, especially for those things where you're setting up a reminder that's very far in the future, right? We're setting up a deadline to have someone be reminded a year later or 18 months later. Having that reminder to know that something's coming up can be another way to effectively use the reminders. And I think that is the key is you have to, as Kyle said, know your team and know how to optimize the different layers that you can use, whether it's the due date, whether it's the reminders, the task types, so that you can continually add that layer of effectiveness for the tasks.
So now we see in front of us, Smith & Jones has put together a nice, clean, organized task list. We have 7 items in this binder prep. We have some things clearly labeled as high priority. There's some categories used in there. We have a couple time estimates. A couple of the action items are actually specifically assigned to certain members of the firm. So this now, when we hit this stage in an estate planning case, we know exactly what needs to happen. It's clearly laid out and no one is getting overwhelmed.
And as I mentioned before, if you'll notice, I know the screen is a little hard to read from the back, is there's a review follow-up for the estate planning a year later after that person has signed, right? So even if estate planning isn't your practice area, that's something that frequently gets lost in the shuffle because you're done, you move on, right? But now we've really structured it so that that little piece does not lose itself. And so when you assign a task list, there's actually a couple of different methods to do so. One is within the matter. And so if you are, actually, let me start off by saying one is within the task list. If you go to your main module with the tasks, in the top right corner, it says assign a task list, or looking at the task list, you can review them and you can assign it here. Of course, you'll have to tell it what matter it is and what your trigger date is. The second method is to be inside the matter. Hey, you're working inside the matter. You know you need to trigger something. You go in and you choose to assign a task list. From there, you'll have already picked your matter because you're already inside it, and you'll be able to choose the assignee and the trigger date. Here's the example of the tasks that were assigned within that matter according to the deadlines and the assignments that were created. One point that you might want to mention here.
Yeah, for those that still do some of their work outside of Clio and don't necessarily live and die by what's in Clio, you can export this list into a nice CSV to work outside the system. Though keep in mind, if you're doing that, you're still going to need to go back into Clio and mark things as complete so that everyone else who is working in Clio knows what's going on.
It all comes down to that one source of truth, right? If pieces are completed in places other than Clio, you'll always have that little question mark over what was actually done or not. And so here we have a large volume of tasks where, or I should say, not this one only has 14. That's not a large volume of tasks. I have seen, and I'm sure you have as well, places where they have hundreds of tasks that are outstanding depending on their date range. One way that you can manage that is you can use your filtering. And so when you look on the top right corner, you'll see the filter button. And that filter button actually, I'm sure you know, already is available for contacts, matters, tasks, and a bunch of other places. And so this is again where you can use the assigned by, or you can use the status, the matter, the priority, the category, and of various other ones that you can see. And so if you're in the line of, hey, I need to manage other people, this is very powerful. If you are trying to say, hey, someone on my I have a group, it's called the discovery team. Every task that's on the discovery task category is managed by those people. Then you can categorize it that way. If you have an area where you're trying to delegate, that too is a place that you can look to minimize and focus in.
So we talk about working smarter, not harder. If any of my teachers or professors, or quite frankly, my wife, were here, she would tell you that I am a big proponent of working smarter, not harder. And we wanted to apply that same idea here with Smith and Jones. Everyone here is hard workers. We all know that, but you have lots of things to do with your time. And so we want to talk about how we can take what we're doing, make it a little bit more efficient, make it a little simpler. And so what we talked about, and you know what? We made a mistake. We forgot to mention.
I knew we were going to talk about it right now.
We forgot to mention, when we talk about the categories and the time estimates and taking the tasks to the next level, all of this is part of using our advanced manage plan. If you want to be expert users and have the expert features, you need to make sure you're using the right tool. And that goes to this next feature as well, which is the matter stage feature. Now, this is something we rolled out earlier this year. I think that sounds about right.
It definitely was 2025.
Yeah, earlier this year, and I'm a big fan of it. For anyone that has Grow, it looks a little familiar. You've used the pipeline in Grow for your intake. This is the same philosophy, but for your active cases. Track the milestones in which your cases are passing through, different for each practice area, and break up your tasks within these different milestones.
I'll tell you the secret that I usually use when I'm working with a client, because sometimes they don't know, right? They say, I don't know do I have the essentials plan? Do I have the boutique plan, which is what the essentials used to be called? Do I have the advanced plan? Well, if you click on your matters and you click on the tab next to it, next to stages, and it looks kind of like an ad, you don't have it. If you go to your tasks and you don't have things like the time estimated, or if you go to the reports and you don't have task reports, all those things are indications that you do not have the advanced plan. So this is something that hopefully we're going to be able to show you the value of
and also
those things.
A shameless plug for our support team. Just give us a call and ask us. We'll tell you.
Well, that too. I just look and see if there's an ad. Okay. So as you can see on our Smith and Jones, we have a variety of different stages here. And specifically in between signing and execution, we want to do all of our binder prep, right? And so when somebody moves from the signing to the binder prep, that's when we want to have all of those follow-up tasks happen. And in order to do that, we must set up the automated workflows in order for those tasks to be automated. Now, task lists can be created by anybody. However, automated workflows can only be managed by people who are designated as administrators in the firm. So you can do all the prep if you're not an administrator, and then an administrator needs to do this piece. So the automations that are currently available are here. The ones that we care the most about for purposes of our class today are when a matter stage changes from one to another, assign a task list, or when a matter is created, assign a task list.
It's also worth noting on this screen, you will see that there is a request a template button. As I said, I'm a big fan of automation. And as you can tell from the keynote today, we are trying to automate and speed up a lot of things. So if you have ideas of, man, I wish when X happened, Y would be triggered in Clio, definitely fill out that request a template option there and let us know, because we are very actively looking at those.
So in this automation, we have said it's the will and estate. It impacts or it affects the practice area of will and estates. When I go from signing and execution to binder prep, then run this particular task list. And it's the one that we've been talking about where it's between signing and binder. I literally created the name so that I would know which one to pick, right? Now, one little quick tip here. The from matter stage is not required. You'll see it doesn't have a little red star next to it. And that's because sometimes your workflows and your stages don't go linearly, right? They don't always go from one to the next to the next. So you can say, look, as long as I get there to that matter stage, then I want to have that chosen. It is an optional field.
Now, the whole point here with these automations is to make things more efficient, save time, reduce the manual entry of having to add those in. And one thing to note, when you look at this example here, we have the task list being assigned to the responsible staff member in this automation. You need to make sure, of course, when you are setting up your matters, you have things like the responsible attorney or the responsible staff member filled out. Because if you don't, and this automation tries to run, it will have no one to apply to and it will fail.
Then you have to do like the hokey pokey, and you have to go back, and then you have to fill it in, and you go back again. You know, left foot in, left foot out. It's not as efficient.
Proper prep is important.
So this is an example of we're moving from the binder, from the signing to the binder, and in the very bottom corner, you'll see it was successful, not only in matter assigning to the next stage, but also assigning to that workflow. And so this is where exactly what Kyle said is you'll get a big old red X saying there was no responsible attorney or there was no responsible staff. Therefore, you're out of luck. And then you'd have to go manually assign it and manage it that way.
Now, as we said, these will automatically get assigned at that process. You get alerted if they don't. So we do try to give you that heads up. And now if we are looking at this particular matter, we can see Smith & Jones has the Anderson case here. They have their binder prep tasks assigned. It's clear. Again, if you're logging in for the day and you go to work on the Anderson case and you need to see what is happening next, what do I need to worry about, what is high priority, it's organized, it's clean. No one is pulling their hair out before lunch.
And of course, all of those tasks are available on the main task screen and can be filtered as well. Sometimes when we do a training, you think, but I have to go into every single matter and check their tasks. And if that's what you're doing as you go through and check on the status, that's fine. But of course, you have the global area or the dashboard, which tells you what's due that day.
Yes, the dashboard is a great call out. I find it, again, it varies. It becomes a matter of user preference, whether you're going to the main stage page, that sounds funny. Or if you go matter by matter, and that applies for a lot of things in Clio, documents, time, whatever it may be, it can just be a matter of preference. I prefer going matter by matter. It's less overwhelming.
I prefer seeing the global.
Yeah, less overwhelming for me, but everybody's different.
So, effective task management is not just about checking things off a list, right? It's about working smarter. It's about organizing your tasks and making them clean. It's about making sure that when you look at a task, you know exactly what's happening. I have to slide in one more anecdote here and say that I have had firms working with where they use the task as an ongoing status of what's going on. And so each and every time they just go into that single task and they add notes as to what is happening. But what that means is that everybody has to literally double click and read through it to figure that out. So the goal is to balance the granularity with the combining to make it effective for your team and your firm. And so the hope is that the right approach allows you to both track and monitor and then automate the assignment so that you can balance what has to happen and make sure that nothing slips through the cracks.
And so as we've kind of gone through all of this today, I hope you guys feel a little bit leveled up, but obviously I imagine your entire team is not here. If you want to take something away, a little something you can provide to the team, help them get started on their task expert journey, definitely scan the QR code. I can see a few of you already doing it, which is fantastic. Take the resource back and start leveling up your team.
The other thing that I'll say is that there's a lot of tips and tricks that we've talked about and that we also incorporated from our colleagues who are doing the intermediate task presentation. So just so that you know, behind the scenes, we had a bunch of meetings and powwows and said, okay, well, what belongs in intermediate? What belongs in expert? And what are the tips that we can all combine? And so this is a several-page document that really summarizes both some of their content and some of ours to make sure that you understand and that we can address any questions. Is everyone good on the QR code? Okay. No. Okay. Pause.
The one quiet no in the back.
Well, we can start talking about the frequently asked questions and leave this up for a second.
Sure.
What do you think is the most frequently asked question that we probably both get? And that is, I think you're probably thinking it right now. Can I assign a task to more than one person at one time? Let me just start off by saying we're not on the dev team. We're not on the dev team. And hopefully we've given you some options that will help minimize that risk, like having, when you assign it to somebody, noticing that you can notify somebody else. We didn't really talk about that because that's not, I don't know that that's expert, but when you assign a task to somebody else, you can be notified when that person completes it or notify that other user. We talked about task types. We talked about filtering and making sure that filters can accomplish that. And so even though this question does say, can I assign a task list, it's meant to say, can I assign a task? My favorite analogy for this is what I call the red shirt analogy. Now, I've taken CPR and first aid classes for many years. In my other life, I've been a coach, a marathon training coach, and so we have to take CPR and first aid. And so the first thing they tell you when you take a class is you don't know what you're doing, please call 911. And the second thing they tell you is when you come across an emergency, you never ever say, somebody call 911. And the reason you don't do that, and I'm sure you can guess, is that either lots of people call 911 or nobody calls 911 because you haven't delegated that authority completely to someone else. So if I say, I didn't plan this, but she is wearing a red shirt. You, in the red shirt, call 911, and they accept that yes, I will do that. Then I know that it's been delegated and it theoretically will happen. Now, I literally have a firm that is struggling because whenever they have a task, they literally create 3 separate tasks for each of the people that they want to make sure it gets done. And the chaos is unbelievable because now they're all checking with each other. Did you do that? Did you do that? Did you do that? And it's not easy. Now, Kyle, you have a little bit of a back scenes on this one.
Yes. Everything Sherry said is correct. There is a philosophy to one task, one person, delegate. However, we're not deaf. We hear you. We know that it is something that you guys are looking for. And I can say it is definitely on our radar and something we are looking at. But in the meantime, I think the red shirt analogy is a great call.
All right. Second question.
Then next we have
Top
is,
one.
can I assign a recurring task? Yes, this is definitely number 2 of the most common. And I'm going to be cheeky here, and the answer is still no. But again, using what we talked about with stages, task lists, reminders that are staggered out can still help accomplish that for now. But again, we hear you. We're looking into it. We are always. I mean, you saw all the updates we talked about today. I mean, we haven't even covered any of that. Like that, there's lots coming. But in the meantime, no.
We knew those were going to be the two, so we didn't even have to ask those questions. We knew that. In fact, I know a couple of others that are on the list, just because I get them all the time, and I have them too. So we're at a time. This is a very short session, and so we really don't have enough time to take more than one because our clock is ticking down to exactly on time. But feel free to come to us after, and Kyle will be...
I'll be over at the Success Center this afternoon and all of tomorrow, so you're welcome to come chat about workflows or any hiccups you guys are experiencing that you want to try and work around. Happy to work them out with you guys.
And I can be reached at the email address or come flag me down. I'm always happy to have a conversation. Thank you, everyone. It's very exciting to see a packed house, and hopefully there was a trick, tip, or information that helped you a little bit.